All right, let me turn on my microphone. All right. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Governing Board. The time is 7:19. Let the record show that all board members are present. I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda, moving items H and J from the consent agenda for separate consideration.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wait, is there any discussion?
I just wanted to clarify
ahead,
that
Ms.
was
Ordway.
5H and J. 5H, 5J, right? The
Yeah.
consent. Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to make that,
Thank you.
loud enough.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. It's 5-0. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, God, indivisible. Okay, thank you guys for your patience this evening. We're just running a little bit late. So let's go ahead and start off with our governing board reports. Mrs. Ordway?
I'll just go over real quick all the visits to the schools for their plays, their assemblies, soccer games, and I'm not meaning to leave anyone out, but most important this week, which I think all of us can talk about, I'd like Marie Brennan to feel really, really good about herself because we had the most awesome turnout for the DVEF Golf Tournament 22nd Classic, and I know I mixed the words up, but it was great. And I will say that the birdies that I got yesterday on that course were in the shape of eagles, the ones that fly, egrets, coots, and all different kind of things. So it was great, and thank you again, Marie, and the foundation for supporting our school district in over a million ways. And that'll be it.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. O'Brien?
I too would like to second the thanks for Deer Valley Education Foundation and Marie Brennan and all of the sponsors who support the foundation and our district. It really is phenomenal to see that the golf tournament is sold out every year and all the great prizes that are donated. So, and it was wonderful to see all governing board members there yesterday as well. I had the opportunity to attend the National School Board Association Equity Conference and Advocacy Conference. Really some incredible learning there. I'm looking forward to the Arizona School Board Association Equity Conference, which will be in March. And ASB actually started the Equity Conference, and National School Board Association came to them for help. So I would encourage if fellow governing board members can attend, that would be awesome. I also was able to attend Bolts with Sheila from Arizona School Board Association. I think we learned lots of fun, interesting facts, which I've shared some with Dr. Finch. So thank you. That'll be the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Fisher?
I have to start with Marie as well. I had the pleasure, my team was made up of me and 3 members of Phoenix Fire Department. And the great thing is, and I have to tell you, is you do such a good job of getting out the message and what you do and what the foundation does and the different events. They're like, what is this for? What? And I could explain it no problem. They were impressed. They were, wow, we do a lot of tournaments and stuff, and this is a great turnout. So they were very impressed. Not to mention that I got to spend time with my brother, as he pointed out, all those birds as well. So you just, I guess, we see it every year and we know what a wonderful event it is, but until you see it through someone else's eyes, you rock, Marie. You really do. The 2 other things I have a couple of requests. One, a couple weeks ago, we received in our Thursday update some information about some pilot programs going in. I want to is inquire if they are pilot programs of supplemental materials or if they are being implemented as adoptions, because we've had other adoptions, replacement type adoptions of curriculum or programs. So I just would like more information on what those are, and if we're removing any other curriculum to put that in place of. So that would just be good information to have. I would appreciate it. The second thing is I did notice that the employee survey went out this year, or this past week. And as always, the request is made that we get a complete data file of all responses. Last year was the first year that we got a complete data file of all responses. And it is beneficial to truly get a picture of what's occurring in the district. So again, I want to extend that request that we get a complete unaltered data file. And then my final thing is, because I just have to give a shout out to Dr. Miller, because I got to attend, I attend events or sports. I rarely attend what is it? A hoop coming assembly. I have got to say that was a seriously impressive assembly. Had they had that when I was in high school, I probably wouldn't have been suspended or expelled as much as I was. That was awesome. So I just have to give a shout out for Dr. Miller as well. And that's it.
So just to be clear, the information on the pilot programs, adoption supplemental materials, and also the employee survey, is that something you want shared in a Thursday update?
Well, the survey they normally load it up to Vibe.
Okay.
When they get it, they load up a complete document to Vibe. Last year's is there if you want to look at it. And then, yeah, I mean, I just requesting the information of what that looks like, and however Dr. Gallen feels it's best to provide it. I'm fine with that. But now that you mentioned that, the other thing is perhaps we may consider reviewing our scheduling of the meetings, because the way we're stacking executive sessions and we want to see the presentations and all that, but then the meeting, I just think we may want to futuristically look at that as well.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
I hadn't jotted that one down.
Jotting it down now. All right, thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Ms. Tweedy.
Well, the thing about going forth is I don't have anything original to say. So I just also wanted to say thank you and what a great job you did. And we really do appreciate everything that the Deer Valley Education Foundation does for our district. Thank you.
Okay.
I left my script at home.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I would also like to thank Marie Brennan for a fabulous event. Well, I can't be the only board member who says nothing, right? It was a great event. It was actually my first time attending, and lots of great prizes. I don't play golf, but it looked like the people who did play golf had a fabulous time. And I just want to ask Miss Tweedy, where's the coffee? You won a coffee maker last night. So I was surprised
Told her
not
not
to
to bring
find
it. It'll elongate our meeting.
or make it really fast and short.
Really
One
fast
of
and
the
short.
two.
Could have
One of
made
the
really
two.
strong
So,
coffee. We'd have gone real fast.
and also wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day a day early. And that's it for my report. So we are on to Dr. Finch. You're up.
Thanks for reminding me. I'll have to make us run at the end of the meeting.
Well, apparently, you could steal.
Oh, right there.
There's plenty of.
I want to also thank Marie. Did a great job. I enjoyed it. My first one there. And I've seen a lot of golf tournaments in my day, and that was a top shelfer for sure. So good job. And the message was clear. I think Ms. Fisher mentioned that. That's important that they make sure why they're there, and we can reinforce it. The banners, we did the banners tonight, and actually, though, everything's still under appeal, and we may not get an actual whether the schools got their banners till the year's over. So I'm protesting. I said, let's print the banners. If we have to go take them down in the middle of the night, we'll worry about that later, but or add more. So we appealed a bunch as well. So, but I think it was we're in February. It's time to raise the banner. So we did. And so that was nice to see the staff here as well and the excitement around it. Good positive PR there for the district as well. We'll gladly upload the data file just as long as we can keep it the anonymous part of it, because obviously that's one of the pieces of what makes the survey great or better. So we'll work on that, try to making sure that we can keep it anonymous, because obviously, like for example, in my office there's only 2 ladies that support the superintendent, so that would narrow it quickly what the responses are. So we'll work on that, making sure it's good stuff for you. Now on the PLC, I think I mentioned the PLC pilot program that we're still in the middle of negotiating with. So we'll eventually have a presentation related to that, either through the Thursday update or through bring it in front of you. We'll know more as we get down the road a little bit further, but it's coming along well. And thanks to Dr. Miller for really carrying the water for us there as well. That's it.
Dr. Finch, I just have to point out that it's there may be only 2 people in your office, but it goes to district office. It doesn't specify down to your office.
Actually, it does.
But point of order, that item is not on the agenda and cannot be discussed.
Yeah, but the request is for a complete.
Yep.
Okay.
We will give it as long as it's anonymous. Thanks.
All right.
Yep.
So, Mr. Miglorino, Fiscal and Business Services.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we have 2 reports to share with you this evening, starting with the student enrollment report. And this is through the 107th day. Just a reminder, we get funded based on the 100th day of ADM, but these are enrollment reports. So these actually show kind of a picture, if you will, a snapshot. Average daily membership would be like a video of all 100 days, if you will, using that analogy. And we're showing a slight spread in the change over the previous year. So we've been as low as about 0.4% reduction. This report shows just over 200 students, or 0.6% reduction comparing the years. And we have a report after this had been published in the packet for the last week, and it was even greater yet at 0.8%. So a little bit of a tailing off into the very start of this second semester when it comes to student enrollment. And it will take probably several months before we actually know what the average daily membership is, because not only is it our information that the state has to count on, but due to concurrency in which our students might be enrolled in other entities, we have to wait for them to reconcile all of that. So it could be into June before we actually know exactly what our ADM is for this year. And as a final reminder, this is the first year that we have it's a higher stakes affair because current year funding. So we won't know exactly how much money we actually get until that ADM is finalized. So hopefully that will be sooner as opposed to later. But again, this is the first year for that to be tested in that capacity. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the student enrollment report.
Are there any questions? Okay. Please continue.
Hearing none, we'll move on to the financial reports for January. And so this is a good news, bad news story. I'm not going to ask. I'm going to give you the good news first. The good news is the number is up. So we were at $540,000 a month ago. It's up to $875,000 this month through January. Comparing this same time period a year ago, we were at $600,000. So the good news is we're trending upward with our carry forward. The bad news about that is that's due to unfilled vacancies. So we're still having difficulty filling positions, especially within the classified staff ranks. As you can see, over $240,000 of that $875,000 happens to be in classified staff contracts that are not being realized at this point in time. So unfortunately, that means we are going without in some capacities at various departments and locations. We're working diligently on that, but this is another maybe consequence, if you will, of the minimum wage increasing, that staffing is becoming more difficult with the classified ranks. And I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the rest of the financials.
Do board members have any questions? Okay. All right, so we will move on to Dr. Galligan, Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Career and Technical Education Presentation.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This evening, Jamie Fitzpatrick, Manager of Career and Technical Education, will share information about our CTE programming. And later this evening, we will have a proclamation for CTE Month, which is February.
Good evening, President Frank, Superintendent Finch, members of the Governing Board. Happy CTE Month. Career and Technical Education, or CTE, is education that directly prepares students for high-wage, high-demand careers in the fields of healthcare, information technology, advanced manufacturing, hospitality, management, and more. Career and Technical Education Month, or CTE Month, is a public awareness campaign that takes place each February to celebrate the value of CTE and the achievements and accomplishments of CTE programs across the country. February is CTE Month, and we want to encourage our schools and community to celebrate and support your local CTE programs by visiting classrooms, posting about CTE on social media, recognizing CTE student achievements, and taking the time to thank a CTE teacher. Our CTE teachers work tirelessly each day to empower their students to own tomorrow. CTE and DVUSD is comprised of 24 unique program offerings on our 5 high school campuses and Vista Peak. New programs offered in the current school year include animation and financial services, both at Boulder Creek High School. Software and app design, computer science, will be offered across all campuses beginning in the fall of 2018. And additionally, capstone courses in culinary arts and sports medicine will be offered at Barry Goldwater and Sandra Day O'Connor, respectively. Mountain Ridge High School will also offer the first year of animation. Fall 2018 will also see the addition of dental assisting at the Westmec Northwest campus, along with 10 newly updated online CTE courses available through the Deer Valley Online Learning Program. Our first-time High School to Career Expo, pictured on the slide, brought in almost 270 families to learn about CTE opportunities in DVUSD. The CTE Expo was hosted by the Career and Technical Education Department in partnership with Communications and Community Engagement. Families were in attendance from all 5 high schools, all middle and K-8 schools, and some families from charter, private, or neighboring schools. Information was shared from students, teachers, counselors, and Westmec, along with opportunities for hands-on demonstrations, providing a glimpse of the full CTE experience to prospective students. In addition to our 24 satellite programs in DVUSD, satellite programs are financially supported and monitored by Westmec. Prospective juniors and seniors have the opportunity to apply to 25 Westmec Central Campus programs and 3 Westmec Central Campus partner programs with Maricopa Community Colleges. Currently, select approved adult programs are available to students upon high school graduation and adults in the community. Students needing to complete a previously started Westmec program began in their senior year may complete their study post-graduation at an affordable tuition rate. Other services provided to Westmec member districts include year-round comprehensive professional development programs with nominal course fees available to all educators and staff. Special needs students meeting specific criteria may be eligible for post-secondary training upon graduation through the Project Search Partnership. Project Search participants receive comprehensive supervised training in the fields of hospitality or distribution and logistics over a 1-year period leading to gainful employment upon completion. Career and Technical Education meets the needs of diverse learners and engages students through the total program delivery model. In the classroom setting, students gain technical knowledge, experience applied integrated academics such as math and reading, develop college and career readiness skills, and earn industry certifications. In the CTE labs, now mandated to comprise 51% of instruction per Senate Bill 1525, students practice and refine attainment of technical skills and work towards practical industry certifications. Student engagement extends beyond the 4 walls of the classroom as students participate in career-based experiences, otherwise known as work-based learning. This comes in the form of internships, school-based enterprises, job shadows, mentorships, and beyond. Students apply their knowledge and skills in a professional setting while working to attain post-secondary and career goals. And lastly, 100% of students participate in leadership development through career and technical student organizations at the local, state, and chapter levels. These experiences provide students opportunities for scholarships, leadership, competitive success, and networking with like-minded peers and adults in their chosen career fields. In curriculum assessment, we begin with our curriculum guides, including scope and sequences, technical standards aligned to sequence of instruction, integration of academics, workplace employability, and dual enrollment competencies, maintained and updated by teacher work teams and the CTE curriculum specialist. And I actually got to work with some of those work teams this afternoon. Over the past 2 years, first and second semester Year 1 assessments have been developed and deployed across CTE programs through School City, providing data and informing instructors as students approach the state technical skills assessment and industry certification exams. DVUSD plays an active and leadership role in the Arizona CTE Curriculum Consortium, working with leaders across the state to ensure quality program delivery and support new and veteran teachers with curriculum resources. Teachers work through PLCs and dedicated early release days and develop common performance-based assessments for Year 1 programs. These include demonstrating hands-on skills in an applied setting, assessed through common teacher-developed rubrics, ensuring consistency across all of our programs. And lastly, students work towards and take industry certification exams such as the Certified Nurse Assistant, ServSafe Manager, technology certifications in Microsoft Office, Adobe, Autodesk, QuickBooks, and much more. All offered industry certification exams are approved by the Arizona Department of Education and the State Board and aligned to JTED legislation and the A through F guidelines. Preparation for post-secondary opportunities for senior students that have completed or are currently enrolled in advanced or intermediate CTE courses are eligible to complete an internship. Placements include large local and small businesses, education settings, and even our own DVUSD district departments. Some of our partnerships include the JW Marriott, TerraPoint Senior Community, Abrazo, Healthcare Facilities, Markham Contracting, and ACSS. Students in many CTE programs can earn from 3 to 12 college credits through Maricopa Community College through dual enrollments, and through Perkins mandated programs of study, CTE students can use both occupational and academic credits earned to work towards completion certificates, AA degrees, and transferring credits to state or private universities to work towards their bachelor's degrees. Our school-based enterprises, better known as SBEs, are an extension of career and technical education classrooms and contribute to the realization of our mission of DVUSD and CTE to empower success. School-based enterprise is an entrepreneurial operation in a school setting that provides goods and services to meet the needs of the market. These SBEs are managed and operated by students as hands-on learning labs and integrated into instruction. A DVUSD teacher work team developed a comprehensive guide to operating an SBE and assures uniform practice and supports consistency across high school campuses. Additionally, CTE teachers attended training at WestMech to gain new ideas, refine these practices in overseeing student-run businesses. School-based enterprises and DVUSD serve not only campus communities, but local businesses. A few of those are Candlewood Suites, which was an account that was just landed by Eagle Inc. at O'Connor. Yoga studios, boba tea, just to name a few, where they're actually creating products that are going into the business world in our community. DVUSD fiscal 2018 federal Perkins funding is $561,000 and state priority funding of $291,000. Our WestMech JTED allocation for our current school year is $1,150,000. DVUSD ensures that our CTE programs are both high quality and compliant with legislation. Within the past 2 school years, all DVUSD CTE programs have been visited and monitored by the Arizona Department of Education, resulting in 100% compliance with both federal Perkins and JTED legislation. Total quality indicator teams from both WestMech visited both DVHS and BGHS this spring with quality scores of over 96% at both schools. CTE students participating, completing, earning certification, and participating in high-quality work-based learning experiences highly and positively impact the A through F letter grades for each of our high school campuses. Within the strict guidelines of the fund uses of the dedicated CTE funding stream, it provides for the building and maintenance of state-of-the-art industry facilities, providing industry standard equipment and supplies, support of CTE student organization activities, professional development, and salaries for classified and select certified employees at the campus level and all administrative and technical support salaries. CTE advocates and continues to work at achieving state and local legislation to improve career and technical education quality and experience. And I thank you for your time and your support this evening.
And thank you for the presentation and for all of the work that you do on behalf of our students. Any comments, questions? Ms. Ordway.
We have such a stellar CTE program. I was at Mountain Ridge a couple of weeks ago, and they were looking at beginning or Chandler School District was looking at beginning their biomedical program, and their director of CTE was over with us, getting the nuts and bolts of that. It's just incredible to watch that kind of stuff happen. So, and by the way, not any more important than that, but the candy and the gifts were fabulous, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4A, old business, adopting the pre-K-12 instructional calendar for 2019-2020. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board adopt the Deer Valley Unified School District Option A instructional calendar for the 2019-20 school year. Or for
Second.
the 19-20.
Okay, any discussion or
I was
questions?
just curious how she how A was chosen.
If it fails, I'm going to read B. If I read them both, then we can't really approve one. That was
No,
just
I know.
my-
I just didn't know if there was a reasoning behind choosing A versus B. So
actually going to ask which one was option A now that I put the motion down, because I don't know.
And thank you for your honesty, Ms. Tweedy. Ms.
Yes,
O'Brien.
I was just to say that option A is starts on August 8 and has 1 day less in October, 1 day off less. So the option B calendar provides for, I believe, both the Jewish holidays to be off in calendar B. That's the difference as I understand it. So that's why
Which one had the teachers starting on Monday versus Friday?
either one starts on calendar A starts on Thursday the 8th. Calendar B starts on Wednesday the 7th to accommodate for the additional
But
holiday.
that's the students. I was curious about the teachers.
Oh, I apologize. I believe.
Dr.
Oh,
Finch would know that.
sorry, Dr. Finch. I apologize. I thought you meant the student day.
They answered it last time, but I can't
From
remember.
1920, yeah, they did. They did. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Well, don't we have-
Maybe
Those.
Do we have three? Don't we have three? Don't they come back 3 days before classes start, Dr. Galligan?
in general?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, that is correct. 3 days prior to the first day of students
So
starting.
then option B would have them starting on Friday, and option A would have them starting on a Monday based on the start dates and them coming back 3 days beforehand. So it is Dr. Finch, did the cabinet or administration have any feedback on either of the calendars?
We didn't vote for one or the other. We actually liked Miss Tweedy's approach. If my phone rings off the hook, I'll vote for that. If my phone doesn't ring off the hook, I'll vote for that. So it's going to be up to you folks. So we
My
don't have
phone
opinion
didn't
either
ring
way.
at all.
I'm assuming your phone didn't ring. So
Just telemarketers, but nobody interested in the calendar.
so no particular choice.
So it's a coin toss?
Coin toss.
Vote A up or down, and if it goes
Well, that was the motion.
Ms. Fisher.
Yeah, the one thing I want to point out is because we did talk about this extensively, and because to me it's important that we honor every religion as much as we can. I know there's a separation, but they did make a point to say that the first day is the important day, not the second one, which it's not my religion, so I can't speak to it. But that they did, that was pointed out, and starting, was it a teacher that came up, or a teacher on the committee that said starting on Friday, they were here anyways to set up their classroom and it helped them? So I don't know if those two things are factors. Do we have any committee people to
Anyone on the calendar
answer
committee?
that type of thing? Because I know that was, I remember the one, I don't remember as far as the starting. I guess my question would be is would the teachers prefer to have that one last weekend and then start on a Monday, or would they prefer I'm going to be here on Friday anyways, I might as well get paid for it? And I could have sworn there was a teacher on the committee that said that was their preference, that if they're going to have to be here anyways, because they all, whether they're on contract or not, come and I mean, I went to set up Miss Tweedy's classroom with her, and she wasn't on contract. So I guess that would be my
Right, I never had the weekend before off. I was
right.
always
And
working.
so just
The
those are
committee
2
was
points
was
to.
split
That
right
was
down the middle.
option. That was option
was-
B.
Is that
Correct.
Option B
that's
we
option
would start on
B.
Friday.
Yep.
We start on Friday and have the extra holiday.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Frank.
No, it would start on Friday and not have the extra, right?
Correct.
No, we would start on Friday and have the additional holiday. Correct.
Talking about the weekend, but
Okay, but when I look at option A,
and the committee was split as well, was right down the middle. So you cannot make a wrong decision here,
In
apparently.
fact, I was going to say, I remember Karen saying that.
Or either way we decide, we're going to make half the people
half
unhappy
happy and half not.
or half the
Right.
people happy, however way you want to look at it. So option B started on teachers on the Friday and then
Right.
had the
Correct.
Option B is the one I prefer, so but that's just
Option B
Okay.
is the one that has the one day for the religious holiday, but they start on Friday.
Okay.
Option A is 2 days for the holiday, but they start on Monday. Because I have B right here. It has 1 day off for the religious holiday.
I believe it's September 30th and October 1st.
Correct. So it would
and
be 2 days in a
option
row.
B,
Okay, so it's not
and then
this here.
October 14th, but it is the one that starts on Friday. If we based on the start, it's the one that would have teachers starting on Friday,
Friday.
based on the start day for students, is my understanding. And I saw a lot of head shaking
Right.
about the discussion about teachers starting on Friday. But again, I'm happy to.
Well, that's
take-
why I'm asking, for sure. I would like to know what the teachers want, because the other side didn't have an opinion.
But I will say, no one contacted me, even though we had requested.
I know
and
lots of teachers
I
and they all
asked a
know my
couple-
number and they didn't contact me.
So
So, okay. So do we need further discussion? Are we ready to vote? We're voting on option A. And that is the motion stands.
Hmm?
All right. So all those in favor of option A?
Nay. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Did I?
Any
tip my
opposed?
hand?
nay.
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 I think I saw a head shake too, so I'm going to say nay, but if we're wrong, we got 4 teachers that are not shaking.
Hold on.
Okay, so option A fails, and am I correct that it is a 5-0? So, Ms. Tweedy, have you another motion up your sleeve? Let's hear it.
I move that the governing board adopt the option B for the Deer Valley Unified School District instructional calendar for 2019-20.
Do we need further discussion?
Second.
Sorry.
Just
Do
saying.
we need further? Just pick one. Do we need further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. So the motion carries 5-0. Option B. And we are moving on to the consent agenda, with the exception of items H and J, which were pulled out for separate consideration. So I need a motion.
I move that the governing board approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of items H and J.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So that brings us to item 5H, authorization to enter into additional cooperative purchasing contracts for fiscal year 2017-18. And I believe before we discuss, I need a motion.
You know what? I'm not in the right.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to give the administration authorization to enter into additional cooperative purchasing contracts for fiscal year 2017-18.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so let's open up for discussion. Ms. Tweedy.
I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself, and that's why I couldn't read the motion. The reason I pulled this, Mr. Miglarino, I didn't get a chance ahead of time. I was reading it really late last night. I just wanted you to clarify, just because I got sticker shock, what the 1.5 million is for the fire security, what we're doing with that money.
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, thank you for the question. And this is just a revision of a contract that was previously approved. So the $1.5 million is not an increase. And fire security does almost all of our fire security improvements, including our intercom systems. And that is also inclusive of the work that will be done in the modernization project, because many times we pull that out of the general contractor's contract. It's still included in the budget, the total budget for the project, but we'll pull that out to avoid any of the contractor markup and separately manage that aspect of the modernization project. So it's included in the 1.5 million. All of the replacement at Arrowhead as well.
I don't want to hold up the vote, and I just I realized, because I've just read this last night, and you may not have it handy. Could you send us a breakdown of how that's being spent in the Thursday update? Just curious about. That's just a large amount, and I just caught it really late, so it wasn't really fair to you to expect you to have the details.
Certainly.
Further questions or discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so the motion carries 5-0. Brings us to item 5J, approving the agreement to resolve a legal matter. And so I need a motion.
I move that the governing board approve the agreement to resolve the legal matters described in item J and all related proceedings.
Second.
O'Brien?
I think we need to actually identify the case numbers. No?
Don't have to. No. As presented, because it's a legal document here.
Okay.
If you wanted to tell the audience, then you could, but
I think we're good.
Okay, so we have discussed this item in executive session, and we will proceed with the roll call vote. Mrs. Ordway?
Aye.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher?
Nay.
Ms. Tweedy?
Nay.
And Ms. Frank votes aye. So the motion carries 3-2. And that brings us to item 6A, 2018 CTE Month Proclamation. I think I get to read this. So, do we need a motion for this?
Do I make a motion?
Yeah, we need a motion.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to consider, and if deemed advisable, to, what's that word after two? Okay, I move that the governing board approve the proclamation declaring February as Career and Technical Education Month in the Deer Valley School District.
So this is the part where I read this very fancy proclamation, Dr. Galligan? Okay, I'm glad I dressed up for the meeting tonight.
Ms. Frank, do we want to vote first?
Oh, yes.
I know you're dying to do this.
I'm excited.
I know,
Okay.
all right?
All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
good. All right, so whereas February 1st through 28th, 2018 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education and Deer Valley Unified School District, whereas Career and Technical Education offers students the opportunity to gain the academic, technical, and employability skills necessary for true career readiness, and whereas students in career and technical education programs participate in authentic, meaningful experiences that improve the quality of their education and increase their engagement and achievement, And whereas career and technical education provides students with career exploration opportunities earlier in their educational experience, which enables them to make informed and beneficial decisions about their academic coursework and pursue established programs of study and career pathways. And whereas leaders from business and industry nationwide report increasing challenges related to addressing the skills gap and connecting qualified professionals with available careers in critical and growing CTE-related fields, including healthcare, energy, advanced manufacturing, and information technology. And whereas career and technical education prepares students for these and other fulfilling careers by offering integrated programs of study that link secondary and post-secondary education and lead to the attainment of industry-recognized credentials. And whereas ensuring that employers have access to a qualified workforce is a crucial step in ensuring productivity among the business and industry communities, as well as continued American economic growth and global competitiveness. And whereas the Smith-Hughes Act, the first act of Congress to provide funding for career and technical education, was signed into law 101 years ago and allows us to celebrate how far CTE has come to become a powerhouse of America's economy. And now, therefore, I, Jenny Frank, Governing Board President of Deer Valley Tweedy Unified School District, do hereby proclaim February 1st through 28th, 2018 as Career and Technical Education Month. Okay. Thank you for your support, Ms. Tweedy. That's much appreciated. Okay, so moving on to action item B. To consider and, if deemed advisable, adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of school improvement bonds of the district. I need a motion.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to consider and, if deemed advisable, to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of school improvement bonds to the district.
Second.
Okay, discussion or questions?
I just have one comment. It's a 50-page resolution. You don't have to read that one. Just saying.
I thought the president had to read all resolutions.
Well, I'll get started if everyone wants to be here till midnight.
I trust that it would be said very well, and
As
I'll
presented.
imagine how it would be said.
Okay. So, no questions? We're ready to vote? Okay. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion carries 5-0. And action item 6C, I need a motion.
I move that the governing board adopt the administration's recommendation for the contract language for the 2018-19 school year.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion, questions, comments? Ms. Tweedy.
I just had one question. Are all of the I just wanted to clarify. Are all of the employees being required to work the exact same number of days as they were last year? Or if there were changes in the number of days, can you explain them?
Is this on? Yes? No? It's. You hear me now? Okay. The contract days are the same as last year. There's one change. I think I shared that about 3 weeks ago. YTP program had their contracts are reading differently this year. They used to have a summer addenda attached. It wasn't an addenda. It's actually contract days that were attached, as they'll no longer be running that program after the end of this next year. Those contract days have been changed. No other contract amount of days have been changed.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Action item 6D, employee travel. I need a motion.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve employee out-of-state travel.
Second.
Any discussion or question on any of these items? Mrs. O'Brien.
Are we doing as in the past, approving them per trip, A, B, C? Just for clarification, or are we doing it as a group?
Does anybody want to pull a trip?
Nope.
So there's no desire to vote on them individually for
Not
any
here.
reason?
Okay.
Ms. Fisher? All right, so if we're all good
Look
with
like
voting,
reasonable trips.
I'm sorry?
They all look like standard trips.
Okay, so if everyone's good with voting as a group, then we'll vote as a group. Any other discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. And the motion carries 5-0. Okay, item 6E, approve addenda pre-approvals. I need a motion.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion, any questions on this item? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. And the motion carries 5-0. And item 6F, approve addenda contracts.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the addenda contracts
Second.
in the attached listing.
Second.
Any discussion, questions on this item? Mrs. Fisher?
Now that we're doing the pre-approvals and the approvals, is there anything to indicate which ones are now here that were pre-approvals? Or are you not putting pre-approvals here? What are we doing with that?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, so everything that's on the approval of addendas, we verify that they were pre-approved. If they weren't pre-approved, we take them back to the requester and find out if they're, what has transpired, in case there's, some sense of urgency or time is of the essence regarding any of the addenda. On the pre-approvals, this is the first time this has happened. We had made a notation of some of the revisions that have taken place, and those are noted as well, that those were previously pre-approved. The work has not begun, but we estimated too low, and these specifically are all within our Deer Valley Online Learning program. We estimated too low in terms of the students that enrolled in these classes, and so we've had to add additional amounts to those previously pre-approved addenda because they are prescribed. There's a formula for determining how much they are paid.
But everything on this, because this is the addendas, this is the one that's already done. These are all pre-approved. They're not something, we're not still, because before we were working out the pre-approval versus what was currently already being done and needed to. So this is all pre-approvals coming to finalization.
That is correct.
Okay. That's
So-
the only question I had.
And Ms. Tweedy?
So just as a time saver in the future, I thought the discussion was after we pre-approved them, they went on the consent agenda because they were already pre-approved, and that's why they did the work. I if I'm wrong, I don't know if my other board, did we decide that, or am I just?
My recollection, I thought we were going to put that on the consent agenda if it was already
Pre-approved,
pre-approved, but
unless there was an adjustment.
So I know the process is new, but I think, and obviously discussing this isn't saving time, but in the future, because it will probably reoccur.
right, but
So,
that's
so
that
is
would
the,
be you guys
yeah,
making
so
that decision on the
is
agenda.
the board in agreement then that the addendas that have been pre-approved and there's no changes
Well,
can be
we-
placed on the consent agenda? Is that?
We can't discuss that now because it's off
Okay.
topic, but I thought we were under the impression that that was what we had decided. That's why I asked the question if this was in addition to or if it was pre-approved just coming to fruition.
Okay, so we'll take this into consideration during agenda review.
Right.
So thank you for the reminder on that. Okay, so no other discussion. I'll call, unless anyone else, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. And the motion carries 5-0. Okay, brings us up to item 7, our preview of the Certified Performance Pay Plan for 2018-19. And thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, President Frank. President Frank, members of the Governing Board, it's my pleasure to give a quick preview of sorry, thank you. Is that better? A quick preview of the Certified Performance Pay Plan. I would like to start with, first of all, recognizing the committee members. Many of my committee members of the committee members are here tonight, including some teachers and some administrators. If you would stand up, please, if you're on our committee. Thank you for your work. As you can see, the structure of this committee has been fairly consistent over the last several years with 4 teachers, 4 administrators, and 2 parents. We do have currently a vacant parent spot, and then myself as a facilitator. We've had a fairly productive committee this year. We've met 3 times, processed the legal and policy-driven things around certified performance pay, looked at past plans, and have developed a plan to bring to you tonight. Their performance pay plan that we're submitting, and this should say, this should say 18-19 performance pay plan. No, I take that back. This is the current performance pay plan, the 2017-18 performance pay plan. I take that back. All right, let's start over. I'm going to go back to the beginning. This should say the 18-19 performance pay plan. There are 3 components, and each of those components we would split and calculate separately. Responsibility, PD hours would be 20% of performance pay, evaluations 50%, and school letter grades 30%. I apologize for the error in the title of the slide. The biggest change here is we've moved school letter grades from 40% down to 30% and put that back into responsibility and PD hours. That moved from 10% up to 20%. And the committee felt this was an opportunity to put more of the outcome of the performance pay in the hands of the teacher. So that puts those hours are in the hands of the teacher. Other than that, I thought we would quickly compare the plan year over year. So this is comparisons of the 18-19 plan to the 17-18 plan. You do have a draft of the plan, marked draft with the changes in red, and you can see as you look through that plan the things that are consistent. And I'll just go through these real quickly. The component definitions for evaluation and professional hours remain very, very consistent. The appeal process is consistent. The structure of an appeal committee, which is 5 members, 3 teachers, and 2 administrators, is consistent. Becoming ineligible either for discipline or not completing your contract, et cetera, remains consistent. The prorating for hire date and the amount of FTE that you're working is consistent, and the process to make sure we allocate 100% of the funds out this year remains consistent. Some changes, most of them minor, and I'll go through the major one in just a second. The component definition for letter grade, it changed. Instead of using a district level letter grade, we're going to use that component. We're going to use school level letter grades, and I will go through that specifically in just a second. The weights for professional hours and the letter grade change, as I mentioned in the first slide. We also changed the payout matrix for evaluation. We actually lowered the cut to get 100% of the payout for evaluation, and you can see that in your plan. We did a little editing and rewriting of the description of professional hours, so we think that reads better. I also edited the list of examples for professional hours in the document, and we took out the opportunity to appeal for professional hours since we've never had one of those, and we think it's fairly clear now in the document. As I mentioned, I said I would go through the biggest change, and this is it. In school letter grades, again, instead of using one district letter grade, which we don't receive, we didn't receive last year, we won't receive this year, we're going to use school letter grades. And basically, payout here is driven by the percentage of schools that we have in the district with at least a B letter grade, a B or higher letter grade. And so the result here is that all teachers, all eligible teachers, I should say, would receive the same proportion of this component, of course adjusted for their FTE or their time in job. And then here's the new matrix for letter grades. We said if at least 70% of our schools have a B or higher letter grade, that you get 100% of that. 50 to 69% would get 75%. If for some reason there's a disaster in the test results and we have less than 49%, then it'd be, or 49% or less, than 0% payout would happen then, which I don't ever foresee happening, I hope. So that's a real quick summary. You have the plan again before you. I hope you had a chance to look at it. We are ready with communication here as we get towards the end of the year. It'll be really close to the end of the year before we start communicating, so we don't confuse teachers with the current plan. And we will follow through with that after the board approves this, hopefully at the next board meeting. Be happy to answer any questions.
Now my mic's on, so you can hear the question. Did the entire committee reach a consensus? All employee groups and stakeholders reach consensus with the plan you've brought forward to us tonight?
President Frank, yes. It was 100% consensus on this plan.
Awesome. That's great. Ms. Tweedy.
Can you go back? Okay, let's just pretend that 69 and 50% of our schools have a B or higher. So then we're only that would make every teacher only eligible for 75%, correct?
Yes, with the exception of there is a process in the plan then the component that ensures we pay out 100% of the
That's what
funds.
I was going to ask. How does that mathematically work?
Then the process as stated in the plan would say take that remaining money and reallocate it according to this last component.
Okay, so wait, let's just pretend that happens. I'm trying to get it. So then the 25% that's not getting allocated, where would you allocate it to? How are you mathematically distributing that?
President Frank and Ms. Tweedy, we would then take this last component, school letter grades, and we would pay out according to the results that we had. So we would pay 75% of that 25% out again, and then we would take that remaining little bit and pay out 75% again ad infinitum until it is all paid out.
So basically then, okay, so then letter grades would be off the table because that's equalized with everyone. So then the remaining 25% would go to the people who had the highest evaluation scores? Is that what you're saying?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, no. Once we're finished with the evaluations, we're done with that component. Once we're finished with the professional hours, we're done with that component. All of the rest of the money is paid out through the letter grade process. And in your scenario, we would pay out 75% of that money, and then the 25% remaining, we would pay out 75% of that again with this exact same matrix. The remaining amount, we pay out 75% again until it all gets paid out.
Okay.
You were thinking correctly.
Okay, Ms.
makes sense.
Mrs. O'Brien, do you have a
Go
comment?
ahead, Dr. Finch.
I think, Dr. Scott, you can fill us in between the lines. What are you saying?
Basically, the matrix is meaningless. We're going to pay 100% of it out to every eligible teacher, prorated for time and job and FTE.
Mrs. O'Brien.
Say that last part again, please, Dr. Smith. Prorated for what?
Time and job, if they only worked half the year, they came on January 1st, then based on the plan, they're eligible for 3/4 of the pay. If they were here for a quarter or more of the year, they're eligible for half of the pay. If they were here for less than a quarter of the year, they're not eligible. And FTE, if you only had a half-time job, you would be able to for 50%, et cetera.
Okay.
Any further questions on this item? Mrs. Fisher.
When you were looking at the school grades, I still go back to, is there any anomalies for some schools that have possibly a lower grade but a larger SPED population or a population that they cannot control what that grade is? And so we're going to drive teachers from one school to another. Was that mentioned at all as you guys reviewed it?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, that concept was certainly discussed. That concept doesn't come into play with this plan,
Okay.
because that school, the school with a high special ed or a low and if they were a low performing school, would not be impacted independently of the other schools. It would be a function of how all our schools perform as a group.
So that they didn't feel that it would drive teachers from one school to another because they don't want to work. You know, I don't want to work school X because they always have a lower grade because of.
Again, President Frank, Ms. Fisher, that this plan should not drive that result, because working at school X because of that performance does not mean they will get a different payout than anybody else. They will still get the same payout as everybody else.
Mrs. O'Brien.
That's not what that says. I mean, maybe I'm misinterpreting that. So if they have a school that it's an A school, it's going to get the higher, isn't it?
President Fisher, excuse me, President Frank, Mrs. Fisher, let's read the, I think it might be helpful for me to go a little slower. I apologize for that. So that's the second bullet says all eligible teachers will receive the same proportion. And what proportion is that is driven by that first column in the table. We look at all of our schools in the district and say what percent of them are a B or higher letter grade. That's all our schools, all 38 with a letter grade. And we say drive the performance pay, that proportion by that, all of our schools.
Okay. So if any of them drop, they have to actually drop to a C for it to be impacting.
We'd have to have half of our schools drop to a C to impact
Okay.
this process, which, as pointed out by Ms. Tweedy, is kind of meaningless anyway.
Right. I just making sure that I confirm that. Thank you.
In
Mrs. O.
Dr. Scott's defense, that's what you told them to do. And the committee to make sure that there was equal access for teaching staff, correct?
Say that again, Dr. Finch.
If I remember correctly, the marching orders you gave to the committee is to make sure that we don't create extra hurdles that you are referring to that would penalize teachers that are at schools that didn't score as well as their neighbors. So the committee worked with that premise.
And I guess I understand that, but God forbid we fall below to the 49% or below, and you have a stipulation that says we're going to pay out all the money, but if we fall below 49%, we're going to pay out 0%. Those two items contradict each other, and as Dr. Smith has pointed out, there's really no difference between the first two, which I guess right now is not sitting very well. I'm trying to process through it, but we're still essentially paying out 100% whether we score, no matter how our schools score, except on that bottom line, because I know I spent a long time since math, but 0 times 0 is still 0. So
President Frank, Ms.
100%
O'Brien.
of the 30%, correct?
what?
There, it's 30% of the money is based on the school letter grade, so it's 100% of that 30%. And I get your point about the 0%.
Right, and so I'm just trying to understand it all. I realize this is draft, so I'm okay.
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, you had 2 points there. I think your first point is very valid, and perhaps it's something we should take back to the committee. Perhaps that 0% should be 1%, so they get 1% paid out over and over and over and over again until it's all paid out with the same effect. So we don't leave that money on the table just to make that formal. And then your other point is back to Mrs. Frank's point. This is the 30% piece, which we're basically saying we want the teachers to have this. And the difference between teachers will be a function of their evaluation or whether or not they did their professional hours. And that's in their hands. That's controlled that control is more in their hands.
And I do understand that part of it. Thank you. Okay. I'll send my notes to Dr. Finch, I guess, after the meeting.
Okay, if there's no further questions or discussions, I'd like to thank Dr. Smith and also thank the committee members, and thank you for presenting this to us tonight. That brings us to item 8, discussion, which is the work session topic review. And I know we gave those topics back to Dr. Finch to reorganize. So I don't know if it's helpful, if you want to give us sort of the global perspective, and then if it might be helpful to go through topic by topic and see where we're at, where we've scheduled it. So Dr. Finch, why don't you go ahead and...
Okay, we took some of your tips and integrated it into the chart. We removed things that were completed, quote unquote completed, moved the more topic concepts that were more pushed by myself, not board related, off the chart or in a different place, not to lose them, but and then went back with the other request that you had was the concept of making sure we hit some kind of timelines if that was necessary for it to have some impact on this year or the following year, to not put it off. And so then we went through and added wherever we could find another Tuesday that was open and started scheduling them. And again, they can be moved or forward or backwards in relationship to tonight, as Ms. Fisher noted, as we do the presentations front and then the regular work sessions that we've been having lately, that we get for long meetings on both ends. Because actually, then we had a session before the meeting. We had a regular meeting, and so we didn't put one up for tonight. But in general, we'll try to get as much as we can done as fast as we can, and again, we're actually adding more work sessions at each meeting as well, so that kind of adds a new variable to the equation. But I think the mission or the objective that you gave me was to start scheduling so we can see a map, and that's what we have in front of you.
So let's start off with questions, comments for Dr. Finch in sort of the global perspective. Mrs. Ordway.
Dr. Finch, I appreciate you giving us a schedule. And again, as we start working or continue working together as a team, the efficiency and effectiveness of the meeting is very important. So not having 3 meetings stacked in one evening, perhaps starting at 5:30, unless it need be. Executive sessions I get, just gives a better work product. So even though I used to like the second or the first and third Tuesdays of a month, I'm really not opposed to that, or to maybe another day other than Friday, but that's my personal, wish. So thank you very much for going through that.
You, Mrs. Ordway? Other? Mrs. Tweedy. Ms. Tweedy.
I had sent Dr. Finch an email after we looked at this list. I wanted to request that we change the Mandarin work session to an executive session and get legal advice before we decide what we were going to do. It would have been scheduled for 2/27 on here.
Yep, I agree with that logic, and have contacted the lawyer for additional questions today, and he said he'll be working on it, so it'll move into the work session executive session mode, excuse me.
So is
Correct.
it feasible to continue with that on February 27th as
Yes,
targeted?
I was thinking it was April, but here I see here it's February 27th,
But
and
2/27/18.
yeah, so that's moving quick. I think we also have, don't we have my goals next week too? Yeah, so we'll have a 3-stack meeting if we keep it there.
Any thoughts on keeping it there?
I have a
versus-
question. What would be the basis for the executive session? Would it be legal counsel on what, contracts?
Full
Yeah,
counsel.
continuation of the questions that we had before, and I think they're legitimate ones, and they're ones that I need to know.
I just want to be clear because
Yep.
we, want to make sure that it's
It's
that's a
around
clear
specific
part that we're not
contracts, which
having a
we are allowed to.
conversation.
Yeah, good question. We're allowed to go into executive if it's around specific contracts.
Right. I
and-
just
and
want to make
legal
sure
advice.
that we're not excluding the public or
Correct.
doing something we might
No,
not.
it's questions that I
For-
need to
for
know as
legal
well.
advice.
Yep.
Mrs. O'Brien? Ms. Fisher?
I actually do, because I'm looking, and when I look down here, you have open enrollment on 2/27. You have report on plans to increase enrollment on the 27th. We have the Mandarin on the 27th. If you also have your goals on the 27th. And I'm just thinking logistically, time-wise, that's a very, that's a lot.
So,
That's a nice way to say it.
open enrollment would be a board meeting preview item, so that would take place during the regular board meeting, not as part of a work session. Which brings us to the two topics,
Correct.
the superintendent's goals and the contracts.
But we're talking about the policy, correct?
Correct. The changes related to the policy that were discussed in the last session that we had.
Okay.
So it's not going to
If
be
we
a
had
topic.
it ahead of time, it wouldn't be too long. And I know we all talked about it, and that's all scheduled before. I'm just, generally, when we talk about policy, it ends up being more extensive. I just want to make sure it's not. I'm just pointing out that those are the things. that are on
So,
that table.
yeah, so,
It is a preview item, right?
It is
So
a
that we
preview.
won't
We're
be
not voting on it
No, we're
that
not going
night.
to vote on anything.
no, we're not
Okay.
voting on
Okay.
it.
The attorney's still looking at it, making it corrections.
Well, then it's just the three and the superintendent's goals?
So the,
Two.
it
Two and
would
the
be two
superintendent.
items in the work session, and then the open enrollment would be a preview item that we would not vote on. And you would have the revised language to look at prior to the meeting.
Correct.
Ms. Tweedy, you had your hand raised.
I think when we were discussing these, one of the issues, but I think it was what Ms. Fisher's saying, so it'd be good if everybody weighed in and you're trying to decide. But the thought was the Mandarin, our questions need to be answered because the school year's, coming to a close and contracts are
Contracts
coming
are due.
out. And then in March, we're going to obviously have to discuss the budget and try to get on some kind of page with the budget. And then there's his goals. So I don't know if we, they all seem like their time, unless I'm off, but they seem like the timing is important. Like
Time-sensitive.
they couldn't be moved to May, I don't know. So do we want to add an extra day, or are you guys thinking it's overloaded?
Mrs. Ordway, you looked like you had a question.
Well, I think you meant to say executive session. for
Correct.
the-
Right,
Correct.
Right, because
Yeah.
you said work session, so
Well,
I'm just trying to.
right. Those are the two
Right.
topics. Part of the work session would be held in executive session. I guess
Right.
it would be
No,
a
I
different
knew.
meeting.
I
but
just wanted to.
it would be the
clarify
two
that.
topics outside of our regular board meeting. True, yeah.
So we're looking at 2 executive sessions and a work session.
No.
No, there were two topics.
Right, but you said we need an executive session for your goals.
Correct.
We need an executive session for attorney.
So then I guess that would take the place of the work session.
I'm just trying to clarify because the change is when we would start. So unless, the only other thing I could think of is if we had a executive session to get whatever questions are answered and then had a work session later. Do we have time to do that for the Mandarin if there's specific?
we're going to do
Right, that's what I'm saying.
My goals, just a reminder, I'm the one that made up that rule or that thought that we would meet 4 times. So there's no rule that we have to do that. My thought was that if we went 4 times, then we could update it as we went along. So February is what I had penned in back in July as a date to hit. So if it moved to March, that makes it tighter. So we either have to do it now or abandon ship.
I would not want to wait. I don't think it would be fair to not give you any feedback on where we think you are with the goals or things that need to be revised, and then in May go, oh wait, that's.
And
I
not
don't
only
think that's
that,
good.
who knows what March is not going to be any less busy than the end of February.
No. So I would prefer that we keep that in February. Ms. O'Brien.
I was going to say that the clarifying question I have around Mandarin is that will it just be an executive session and then we won't have an additional work or study session around Mandarin on the same evening? Is that the thought process, or are we going to wait
Have
to
both.
get information back or have both, I guess?
Well, I think my thought was we would get the legal advice that we need in the executive session,
Right.
and that we would not then need a separate work session, but I'm open to.
Okay. I was looking for clarification, and so
That was my
that's the
thought. Was that also
clarification.
your
That's
thought,
exactly what
Dr.
I was
Finch?
thinking. I was thinking February, get our advice and go attack the topic again in April if we needed to. because before the end of the school year was I was thinking anywhere towards the end of the school
Well,
year.
We would,
So-
yeah, we would need to make sure it's consistent with
Yep.
our contract timeline.
And we should get we should get advice that will tell us what we can do or can't do in that executive session. If they say we need to
Right.
move it up, we'll move it up. But I kind of told Mr. can tell me that we get information soon, and then we would shoot for April. So again, he might give us different advice.
Mrs.
Well,
Fisher.
As statute says, even if they were a typical teacher, we have until, I think it's April 15th. We do our contracts super early, and I don't really know why. We don't have anything to stop them, but even if they have a contract. So I don't really know why, but I think we could, so long as it's by April 15th.
Okay.
The notice to,
We can talk about it in our agenda review, where to put it.
Does anyone have strong feelings about leaving it in February versus moving it? Speak now or forever
well,
hold
the
your
one
peace.
thing I do have strong feelings about is making sure Dr. Finch's goals are on there.
No, I
because
agree.
That is the one thing that I have a strong feeling. I just believe it's important.
I think, personally, I think we have time for both executive sessions, but I would not want to tack on an extra work session on top of it. Ms. O'Brien.
Can we make, my request would be that potentially the executive session for superintendent goals be
Correct.
after the meeting, so that we would have time for legal advice, then the 6:30, then our normal 7 o'clock,
Sure.
and then his executive session.
That's
so
fine.
we're
Not rushed.
not rushed or
Yeah.
and on staying time. Thank you so much.
Okay,
for
yeah,
And
I think that
consideration.
works.
And maybe just think about
Certainly.
not having the number discussion on that night's meeting. So we
Okay.
wouldn't have this.
We'll
this
look and see
agenda
what's
item.
coming up
Yeah.
on the agenda and try to make sure we don't have too many heavy items.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll just continue on to the list. So we've talked about next on the list. Well, we've got the superintendent's goals, so we've talked about that. Budget process update. There's a schedule for a work session on March 6th, and I think the thinking there was we have budget coming up, so it's a time factor. Any thoughts? Okay. A work session on the 13th where we would review Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook and bullying programs, a request by Ms. Fisher. Is there anything you wish to clarify on the rationale for that? What you'd like on the 13th, Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook and bullying programs. So rationale and what you'd like to accomplish during that work session. If you
Well,
want to-
we started a lot of heavy work on the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook in 2015. And at that time, I know Ms. O'Brien had submitted notes, and I had submitted notes, and we made significant changes and improvements to the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, but there was still a lot that went undiscussed, and a lot of things that still, I believe, need to be changed, some clarification in language. And the prior year, what had occurred was we did not give any direction because for whatever reason, it was refused to put it on an agenda. And so when it came to the board and we discussed it, at that time, the committee felt like, hey, well, we did all this work. You guys should have said that first. So my thought is that we need to, if we have an expectation, we should provide it first, not wait until they've brought a finished product and then say, oh, no, we don't like that. I just think that's disrespectful. That was the purpose of trying to push it in.
Okay, so your objective in reviewing this is to review areas that we may
The board may want the committee to address.
want the committee to address so that we can provide the committee with direction prior to the committee doing their work,
Finalizing it, yeah.
finalizing
I'm
it.
th-
Ms. Ordway.
And is there a reason why we're making that a work session as opposed to a study session? I certainly would like our stakeholders to be able to comment, certainly. Absolutely.
I have no objection.
Something that absolutely affects our stakeholders.
I have
That's a good idea. They
Students,
might have
parents.
input and this affects me this way or does it that way or.
All right. So then we could make the session on March 13th for the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, then a study session rather than a work session where public would have the opportunity to
Well,
comment.
It does, well, am I looking at the wrong one? Student rights and responsibilities, it says study session.
Well, I don't,
No, it says work session. 313.
Ms. Frank said work session, so I'm just going by what's being
Mine says-
spoken at
mine
this
says
moment in
work.
time.
Oh.
schedule part says work, but the red says study.
Yeah, I just want clarification.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I see that now. No, I'm looking at what's in the far right column.
Oh, I didn't even look at that where it says that. You're right. I think
That's-
they all
that's
say
the-
work
I'm-
session regardless of
Yeah,
what they
no, I'm
are.
looking at the follow-up. So, yeah, so that would need to be changed then to a study session so that it's consistent with,
We didn't catch that. We can go back and work on it
Well,
one more time too.
All of them down
We're
from
already up
there
to
that way.
Yeah,
They
I
say
can
study
see
session
that.
and work
Yep.
session.
We can decide and bring it back.
I don't know that we want the public to comment on board goals. It might
I
not
don't
be a
know.
good study
The
session.
brave people do.
Just saying. I see Maria shaking her head, no.
Frank,
Yes.
on for further clarification on the student rights and responsibility handbook, so is the expectation that then board members would come to that meeting with their requested changes or areas of concerns, as opposed to we won't be sitting in that meeting going through the book together? I just
No, I think a little homework is in order to make the meeting more efficient. Board members should come familiar with whatever the sections, or are there specific sections that we want to look at? I know, because I wasn't on the board when you did the previous work.
right.
So,
I guess I have one other question. Has the Student Rights and Responsibility Committee already begun working on any modifications? I don't know if that's Dr. Galligan's
Yeah, I wonder if Dr. Gallagher knows
area
if the
or
SRR
Dr.
book's good.
McNeil. Has the Students'
ALS?
Rights and Responsibility Committee begun work on revising the handbook for the 18-19 school year?
President Frank, that work happened last school year. There was not a charge to bring the committee together this year, as we felt that the work has been done. Based on the comments here tonight, it sounds like the committee probably needs to get together, perhaps to have a conversation about how is the handbook being used. But as far as I know, there has not been a regularly meeting scheduled year after year for the handbook.
And that's fine. I'm not suggesting the committee has to be reconvened right now. If they're already working, it'd be nice to not duplicate work. If it is as it is, and I can start looking at it there, and then makes me feel better.
Right. President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, there has been conversations within the ALS department about things that need to be perhaps looked at as a department. I believe I am correct in that I've heard that the governing board does not, or the SR&R does not get approved by the governing board, that it is an internal document. I don't know if that's correct or not, but is the SR&R approved by the governing board or not? So that's still a mystery to me as I'm learning that. There are some topics that have come up this year as we're looking at long-term suspensions, et cetera, more as of late. And one of the ones that we have recently had, there's been lots of conversations and making some tweaks within that. Don't know if that can be done within just ALS or if that needs to be brought to the committee.
If I
O'Brien.
if I recall correctly, we did as a board approve it 1 or 2 years, but then I believe last year we were told whatever changes were being made that it was internal, as you just stated. So just my recollection from my couple of years on the board.
Let's just say we give lots of input, and then we accept what you give us back, hoping that you've listened. But I think maybe what we have in the past at times. But what I was wondering, if Ms. Fisher is going to, if we're looking at another philosophy, I mean, are we looking at changing? Because I really don't want to get to this study session and not have a lot of information. So if we're looking, we have that equity conference with ASB. I know that Ann was there. So if we're looking at implementing, I don't know if that's what you guys are looking at, but I'd really like to be on the same page when we have the study session so we know what we're talking about, what direction we're going.
Mrs. Fisher?
Well, I don't know that we're changing a philosophy or that type of, but the one thing, and I thought that was where Miss O'Brien was going, so I was totally not where she was, but the year that we did bring comments back, it was bring your stuff to the meeting, and then it ended up, we had the meeting, and then it was, okay, everybody send their stuff, because now everybody needs to get on the same page. So to avoid that, I think it may be beneficial if we say, you know, if you are going to have X, Y, or Z that you want to discuss, put your notes together, send them in, and then it can be sent to all board members so that they have them. Because, you know, I know Miss O'Brien had a list of questions she had submitted, which none of the board members had except for her. And I had taken the whole book and had annotated and documented and stuff, and none of the board members had that either. So it was kind of a destructive start. So my preference would be that we each individually look in that book and say, these are the areas that I see concern, and this is what I want to talk about, so that the other board members are on the same page and can say, you know, I'm fine with it how it is. I read your notes, but I'm fine with it how it is. And it at least gives us a start of where we're at.
Do we then want to decide on a date by which everyone would have their questions? And I'm assuming we would send them to Dr. Finch. So do we want a target date?
Well, right. I don't see why the date of the 13th you have there would be.
I mean, for people to, is this
I don't-
something we want to look at?
I don't see why that would be out of line. That's a month away. Well, no, that's the wrong month. Right.
That's the night of the meeting, so don't you want, if you want everybody to see it before that meeting, we would need to back up and
Have it there by the.
I am a little nervous about the board getting in the weeds here. That I agree that policy should govern. That's kind of your role. I agree that you should send a philosophy, but I think you should park on philosophies, concepts, and then give the charge to the committee, have them do their work, and then come back and get approval that way versus hashing it out at the table here.
Well,
Because that's really their areas of expertise, and if you can give them the general direction, that would help them be productive. That would be my suggestion.
Mrs. Ordway?
I was just going to say, if we send in what our interest, beliefs, concerns, whatever you want to, title you want to give it, and send it in to you to disperse throughout. I mean, that's the way you get the input from the people that are actually putting this work into place. So I'm sure there's principals that would love to hear these questions and see how it would play out. I'm sure your department, would like to know that. And then the feedback that we would discuss would be maybe from the information that you guys glean. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
Mrs. Fisher?
I disagree. I believe that we are responsible. It's in statute that we are responsible for the discipline of students. And so if something is being applied that is outside of what we would do, I think we have a responsibility to at least let the department that would handle it know, so that there's no surprise at the end of the day. Because otherwise you bring something back and we go into an executive session or we sit out here and the perception is that we have no idea what you're doing or that we're being critical of your work when we never set an expectation to begin with.
I agree.
And so that's kind of
You did mention the application,
concern.
though, not the policy. You're worried about the application, and I don't disagree with you.
Oh, no, we're not talking about the application. We're talking
That's what you
about the
stated.
book itself
Okay.
and what it says in it. And if maybe we do need to change a policy to make that book not state some of the stuff it says in it. I don't know. But that's a discussion.
So then we would want to have our thoughts to Dr. Finch a week prior to that study session. Mrs. O'Brien?
I guess based on what I'm hearing Dr. Finch say, I think he and staff are going to need more lead time then too to be able to see our comments or questions because I do remember going through the book and I had some questions and not so much I wanted to understand better maybe what philosophy or policy was driving where we were at and and maybe in practicality how that was happening in the classroom. So I think in fairness to the staff who are implementing our policies, and I would like for them to see what we have to say so that we're not just sitting down just with our information
Right.
and no feedback from Dr. Finch and staff. But that's just my idea. So if we need it to bump up even farther back for it to be in a week or 2 weeks so they have plenty of time. So I need to know from Dr. Finch, what kind of lead time do you need if we're having a March 13th meeting on this topic?
Good question. Again, I'll go back to my general philosophy that boards are in charge of policy and the overarching principles of documents. So I would not be opposed to you giving us those on the 13th. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
And then you charge the committee that this is what I'm looking for. This is the direction I want you to go. These are the areas of concern we have. And then the committee does the work and then comes back hopefully with the product that you're looking for.
Okay.
If not, you send it back and say this doesn't fit the philosophy of this board. This board believes X, Y, or Z. It's my general thoughts.
Sweetie.
And then and that's up to you because I don't want to overstep. Would you want to know if the way you're executing something, if it were to come to an appeal, I'm not going to uphold it? Would you want that information?
Yeah, that's a totally different discussion. The
I
application.
mean, if there's something in that policy where if you do it
Right.
and it gets appealed, I'm not upholding it.
Correct. That's you're on the right path. The discussion about application or and reinforcement of it, that's a whole different thing versus the actual policy and the actual document versus the application of that document. Those are two different things.
Ms. Fisher.
I exactly what you just described is exactly what we do. We come together, we discuss it, we talk about we see where something is. Does it belong in policy? Does it belong here? I don't like this one thing or that because, like Ms. Tweedy pointed out, when it does come to an appeal, we're going to say, this is what this is supposed to have been. Is that not how this was applied? We're going to ask those types of questions. So that's kind of the point of this. We're not writing the book. We're just saying these are the areas we see where if this comes to appeal, it doesn't have any teeth, that type of stuff. And then we do turn it over to whomever, and they do what they do with it. If you look at my notes and Ms. O'Brien's questions, we did not change the SR&R. They took my notes and her questions and anything else that was submitted to the committee. The committee worked with that and worked with MTSS and whatever else they did, and then they brought us back a product.
Yep.
So that is kind of what we do.
Yep.
So I want to make sure that you understand we're not intending to write the book. Just bring our concerns,
Yep.
and if it's policy that needs to be
I would
changed,
agree
that's
with
one
that.
thing. If it's this that needs to be changed, it's something else.
SR&R is it really boils down to, is it a policy manual or is SR&R a policy? Are you looking at policy or are you looking at giving the guiding principles behind the SR&R book, i.e. the policy? The policy is actually above SR&R, and it probably says something like you'll treat all students X, Y, and Z. That's the policy that the governing board makes. And if they want to tweak that, if you guys want to tweak that, which gives us more direction on let's say all handbooks, if it's very possible that every handbook in our district is not following X, Y, or Z if you change your philosophy. So that's the separation of the two branches, I guess. I don't disagree with where you're headed, but I just want to make sure that we are on the same page, that board does policy, the staff do the carrying out of that policy. Correct?
I think we're on the same page. We
Okay.
do you guys do the legwork. We approve it,
Yep.
and then when you bring it forward, because the biggest problem is that whatever is created somewhere else is never presented to the board until it then has to come before the board, and then it's like, well, where did this come from? And the answer is, we just kind of decided somewhere. It's not productive. So I think we might be on the same page, but maybe we'll save that for our conversation on the 26th, and that'll be one of our topics.
Alrighty.
Okay, so we're good with continuing that as a study session on March 13th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so brings us up to April 24th. And Ms. Fisher, you had a request for a study session for the Certified Classified Manual Review. So if you could give us some rationale on that. Because
That's a way, way old item from 2015. So it's a matter of there was questions on whether it had ever been discussed openly and actually looked at. Was there things in there that don't belong in there or do? And it was all the manuals. It was a conversation with Dr. Weitner. That's where this all stemmed from. So, and I haven't looked at it since then either. So I would have to look at it and say, is this something that we're supposed to be looking at? And do we want to clean it up or not? Because there was a lot of, well, I don't know. I haven't looked at it.
My argument would be the same. This is back down in the weeds again. So if you want to provide, do
Well-
the same concept and do the overarching principles and then charge the committee to clean it up or whatever, that would be fine.
So you want us in policy to defer our responsibility
You
to
do policy.
the statutes?
Yeah, you do stop policy.
We don't just do policy,
we
Dr.
do-
Finch. There are 42 things that we are required to do.
I don't think SNR, R&R, or the certified manual is one of the 42. Just saying.
So, do we want to move that to later? Is this not a high priority item?
It's not a high priority
Okay.
item.
And Mrs.
I
Ordway.
also wanted to mention that we have associations and we have our human resource department, and they're the ones that do these agreements and manuals. If there's something in the manuals that's not following a policy or a statute, then whomever is in charge, I'm going to just pick on you, Jenna, because I think mostly you do that. How do you make sure that everything's following policy? I mean, that's yes. What? I'm sorry, Dr. Finch. Can I? I didn't need to do that, but I just want to follow the process to ensure that what the associations are agreeing to in their certified and classified manuals are following policy and statute.
Correct.
That's your question.
But if there needs to be policy that's overarching that needs to guide it better, we need to address that. That's my point.
Okay. I just didn't know that we got into the manuals.
I don't
that's
know
all.
that we've had a lot of the same kind of discussion surrounding the certified and classified manual that we have, for example, around the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. And it is the certified manual is negotiated with the recognized employee groups.
Right.
So,
And we have to vote on whether or not we even go into negotiations. If the board so chooses to just leave it at a vote whether we're going to have associations or not and not worry about what the associations do or not, I guess we could take it to that and just do that level. If that's the desire.
That's the board's responsibility.
okay, so this is not a high priority. So this is not something that needs to be discussed in April because, quite honestly, April and May are going to be quite packed.
Right.
All right, so we'll move that further down the chain, possibly to the summer. So that brings us to April 3rd, a study session on boundaries, programs, innovative ways to distribute student population, transitional high school. This was a request from Mrs. O'Brien, Mrs. Ordway, and Mrs. Fisher. Something we still wish to discuss at that time. Do you have a rationale?
I have rationale, but we have no time, and there's no. I mean, the boundary part. I don't know.
Well,
maybe
that
after we
alone is one whole
right.
study
I would
session.
think that for me, when we discuss Dr. Finch's goals, we'll see where that stuff might fit in and see if we can figure it out from there.
Mrs. O'Brien? Thoughts?
If I recall correctly, the Dr. Finch wanted to have the boundaries discussion later on, given the heavy lift that was going on in a lot of other areas, and I'm okay with that. I think that is one of the things I was attached there, which would also go with transitional high school related to enrollment. So I think those pieces need to fit in into his increasing enrollment topic. So when that's appropriate to bring, I'm good with that.
I do.
Judy?
Go ahead.
Although this wasn't my item, if I could just weigh in now, when I'm getting in the board updates about thoughts of a community center and spending large amounts of money to move, and that there's consideration of overpopulated areas and starting new programs, until I really understand what we're planning on doing with boundaries and how we're planning to solve the over-enrollment problem that seems to be getting worse in some areas, I can't really support any of those things. So if these are things that people want to move forward on, I want to have the boundary discussion to at least understand what we're doing. At least with that, I'm not saying we should go change everyone's
Well,
boundaries.
that's obviously going to be a very long piece. That's not something we're going to solve in one work session or study session, but it might be beneficial to go ahead and begin the conversation. Mrs. Fisher.
I understand one of Dr. Finch's goals is the increasing of enrollment, but we have been putting off boundary changes for a long time. Originally, the boundaries didn't change because, and this was a prior board, prior to even Ms. O'Brien and I getting on, there was a board member that had concerns or what have you, or reasons to not. Then we didn't do it for one reason or another, but the process of changing our boundaries is a long process, and it starts with Mr. Miglerino doing his community meetings and whatnot. The latest one that, and I'm not sure whether this was from Dr. Finch or somewhere else, that it was an election year and let's not do this. I do not believe anyone should put their election ahead of boundaries, ahead of our students' best interests. We have schools that are exploding, and we have schools that are under-enrolled and are in danger of potentially losing their AP based on enrollment. And I think our top priority needs to be our campuses and our kids and our staff in those campuses. I think boundaries, it's a long process, and if we wait to start the discussion, when are we going to wait to start the discussion? Until we know who's elected, until we, at what point? Because it doesn't benefit our kids to do that. I really think we need, we don't necessarily have to, we have to get the budget done first, we have to get other things done first, but we have to start this discussion so that Mr. Miglerino can have his meetings that he has. And how long was that when you did it the last time? How many months was that of meetings you were doing with the community?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, I don't think there's anything prescribed in anything that I can see that this has got to be delegated to me. So just for the record, I think that there are several.
But you did it so well last time.
Did the meeting so well, yeah.
But typically that process can happen during the course of a given year, but it doesn't need to take 12 months. So usually I think the last series of meetings took approximately 4 to 6 months.
So if we did start it in April, May, it's going to be 4 to 6 months anyways before it's, I just think it's an important discussion considering we have exploding schools, you know, I mean capacity, and we have under-enrolled schools that are running, their enrollment is now dropping low enough to potentially change their staffing model. So I'm concerned for our schools if we put this off for too long.
So we currently have it scheduled for April 3rd. It's a study session, a work session. I think I would recommend that we initially start off with a work session rather than a study session. Obviously, it would be open for public input later.
Oh, okay.
But I agree. Right. But I agree. If we're looking at creating magnet schools, if we're looking at creating, programs to drive enrollment, then we really need to look at boundaries hand in hand with that. So I think we should at least, my personal opinion is we should at least begin the conversation.
And I wasn't suggesting that we put this off till after the election. I want to make that perfectly clear. I'm happy to have this discussion on April 3rd or whatever time it fits in the calendar. I just know we have a budget and we have some other big topic items that are this board has asked to discuss as well. That's all.
And thank you for clarifying that, Mrs. O'Brien. So for the short term, let's leave it where it is. If it looks like, since we're taking out or moving back the certified classified manual review, maybe we want to move boundaries to later in April. We can kind of take a look with that or split it. There was a request for a study/work session on employee social media policies and procedures and student access. Is that more of a request for information?
No, we got information back. And we found that there was a lot of conversation of, well, we know that this is in policy and we're not supposed to be doing this, but this is what's occurring. And we talked about, so Brian, you would probably know because I think you're the one that mentioned it, coaches that use certain things for their athletes to communicate, something like that. This came up because we need to make sure our policies don't prevent them from doing that, but at the same time there's still a decent policy in place. And it's been a while, so I'd have to even look at what that conversation was, but we talked about protecting our teachers as well as having that security and separation.
So is this something that you want to keep where it is in April, or something that we could move
I don't
towards
think
the
it's
rest of the
top
summer?
priority. I mean,
Okay.
it won't become top priority, I guess, until somebody violates something and we end up
I guess
somewhere,
I would suggest maybe moving that, if we're going to keep it as a work or study session, to the summer, if it's a lower priority, because I just know how budget, there's just going to be a lot with that.
It could even be after the start of the new year. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think
All
I don't think it was.
So
one of those
if we move that will open up some time for. Right, that opens up some time there on April 3rd. Study session for the community ed department relocation. Follow-up was a April 17th work session. Ms. Tweedy?
I had concerns about the $500,000 cost and where that fit into our budget priorities and going forward, like why it was important to spend that much money. So I think if we did the boundaries first, or discussion, it might help me to understand, but I wanted to discuss that.
Any questions? Comments? Okay. So
budgetary, don't we have to do it before the budget, or?
Dr. Finch?
Yes, but we are not tied to a timeline. So if we want to do something this summer, yes, we would have to tackle the problem earlier or the opportunity earlier. But I'm not married to a timeline. I think it's more important that we make a right decision than a quick decision. So I'm comfortable with that timeline. And again, with all the number of the other things that are piling up, and the dollars would be coming out of community ed and not out of M&O anyway. So I'm comfortable with that. It would just might delay it a little longer. We want to move it up. I can talk to. We have moved a couple things already, so maybe it would fit in earlier. We can talk about that at the agenda review.
Okay. I'm not opposed to moving it up since we've moved some other things back.
Sure.
Okay. Board goals, and Ms. Fisher, that was a request from you.
Actually, that has been on there for multiple years because we have the one goal sheet that we did. We attempted to worry about board goals. There's always seems to be something that overrides doing it. So if the board doesn't want to set actual goals, if we want to stick to just the evaluation tool, that's up to the board. I feel like we're, without clear, positive goals, I feel that we're operating in silos. That's just my opinion.
Other thoughts on this topic? Okay, so Ms. O'Brien?
I was going to say, this has been a request of others. We've
Okay.
talked about it. It was just never, it's always been moved to the bottom of the list over and over again.
Okay, so do we want to leave it on April 24th? Okay, and if Ms. Fisher, if you would write up a rationale
I could.
for me, I would appreciate it since it was your request. Policy revision had a next follow-up for 424. Was that, which policy? Was that all of the policies, the
ASBA time.
ASBA policies?
Well, that's an ongoing. That's not necessarily a work session. That's an ongoing of starting the process of making sure that our policies are ours. So I don't know if that's a work session unless y'all want to review all. But
No.
I have a question.
Ms. Ordway.
Would we not want to make a decision on if all or most of us would want our staff to endeavor down the road of that? I mean, that's a lot of work for, I'm not quite sure still why we're doing it. Or why we would assume that we're doing it, since I don't think we all agreed to it.
Then perhaps that should be a discussion item at a future board meeting rather than a work session. Okay, so open enrollment, there's a preview item on February 27th. I'd like to thank everyone who participated in the work session on open enrollment. Transportation policy, we also discussed at that work session, so the next follow-up is a future regular board meeting. Performance pay discussion is already will be on the agenda. Since we saw the preview tonight, salaries and benefits, I think most of the rest of these are follow-ups at future board meetings. Does anyone, rather than having me go through and read item by item, seeing the looks on everyone's faces.
We trust you. We read it.
Any comments for the good of the cause on any of those items? If you think of anything between now and, say, the time you get home, feel free to send me an email. You know where to find me. Okay, so that concludes our, unless anyone has anything else they want to say. They're all shaking their heads like, oh my God, no. Okay, do we have any public comments?
No.
Awesome. Future meetings and dates are posted, so I guess we are ready to adjourn. If I can get a motion to adjourn.
moved.
Second.
Okay, so I adjourn. Get my gavel.
Favor.
At
Aye.
9:10.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Aye.
I didn't think anybody would vote no. Okay.